The rain was not over in Yunhai City, and the neon lights on the streets were swaying in the water, like some broken dreams. Lin Ruoxi stood in front of the window of the apartment, holding a cup of coffee that had already been clear in his hand. His eyes were not on the rain outside the window, but staring at the letter on the table. The envelope was ordinary cowhide paper, without a signature or an email, as if someone had stuffed it into her door. There's only a thin piece of paper inside, with a string of unregulated numbers written on it, 3-17-9-22-5-14. There's another sentence below, written in a red pen, cracking it, or the next one is you. She turned the letter over and looked at it more than 10 times, her fingers unconsciously rubbing the paper, and her brain had already started to fly and move quickly. This string of numbers is not random, absolutely not. She could feel that there was a certain logic behind it, a certain pick. In recent cases in Yunhai City, similar codes have been left behind in each scene. The police have not published much information, but she has heard from some channels that those codes are called death passwords. No one can unlock it, and no one knows what the hands are trying to fuck. Lin Ruoxi put down the coffee cup, walked to the desk, pulled out the drawer and took out a black notebook. The cover of the notebook has been a little worn out, and the details of various cases she has taken over in the past few years are densely filled with. She turned to the blank page, picked up the pen and started writing the numbers, trying to find the rules in the picture. 3-17-9-22-5-14, is it a password? Or a coordinate? Or is it a letter corresponding to? Her pen tip was flying on the paper, and her brain looked like a high-speed computer, trying to disassemble every possibility. At this moment, the phone on the desk shook, the screen lighted up, and a new message was displayed. She glanced at the address, and the sender was a strange number, with only one sentence: "Don't waste time, come and find me, I have what you want." There was an address attached at the back, which was a waste warehouse located in the southern district of Yunhai City. Lin Ruoxi glanced at her eyebrows and stayed on the phone for a few seconds. She didn't like being driven away by the nose, but the time when this news came was so coincidental that she had to doubt what the other party knew. She put her cell phone back on the table, put on a black sweater, a hat, and prepared to go out. Before leaving, she looked at the letters on the table again, and there was a chill in her eyes. No matter who this is, she will play it to the end. The southern area is the most afflicting place in Yunhai City. The streets here are narrow and dirty, and the air always smells unclear. Lin Ruoxi got off the taxi and stood in front of the abandoned warehouse. She was quiet around her, with only a few sounds of dogs barking from the distance. The door of the warehouse was half open, and it was pitch black inside, and I couldn't see anything clearly. She took a deep breath, held the self-defense rod in her pocket, and walked slowly in. As soon as I stepped into the warehouse, a damp musty smell came over the surface, and the ground under my feet was a little sticky, as if no one had swept it for many years. She turned on the flashlight of her phone and swept around her light, only seeing some old shelves and scattered iron buckets. At this moment, a low voice came from the darkness: "You are coming faster than I thought." Lin Ruoxi turned around suddenly, and the light from the flashlight shot straight past, illuminating a man wearing a black baseball cap. He stood behind the shelf, half of his face covered by a hat, only a pair of sharp eyes were exposed, as if he could see through everything in a person. She recognized this guy Zhang Yechen, the mysterious guest who called Shadow online. They had an intersection a few years ago because of a case, and this guy almost made her fall into a big head. She had no favoritism for him, but she had to admit that the technology of this guy had indeed changed. "The message you sent?" Lin Ruoxi's voice was cold, without a single temperature. Zhang Yechen sniffed at his shoulders, walked out from the back of the shelf, holding an old notebook computer in his hand, and a bunch of incomprehensible codes were displayed on the screen. "Don't be so tight, I just want to help you. After all, this game is not simple." "Game?" Lin Ruoxi narrowed her eyes and tightened her fingers in her pocket. "Do you know about that letter?" Zhang Yechen did not answer directly, but turned the computer over, and a monitoring screen was displayed on the screen. In the picture is a dark alley, a man lying in a pool of blood, painting a string of numbers in pink, exactly the same as the string she received. This is the scene of the case 3 days ago. The police blocked the news, but I dug it out in the dark network. His voice was low and he was ridiculed. The death password has begun again. Lin Ruoxi stared at the screen, her face becoming more and more difficult. Of course she knew the death password, that there have been such cases in Yunhai City over the past few years. The soldier seemed to be deliberately provoking the police. Every time he killed someone, he would leave some digital codes. No one could unlock it, and no one knew the soldier's mobile phone. But this time it was different. This time I sent the letter directly to her door. What does this mean? She is being targeted. You come to me, won't you just show your hacking skills? Lin Ruoxi took back his video and looked at Zhang Yechen. Say, what do you want? Zhang Yechen closed his computer, grinned, revealing his white teeth. Cooperate. These codes are not something ordinary people can crack. You have brains, I have skills, and we work with each other, and we may be able to dig out some interesting things. Lin Ruoxi did not answer immediately. She did not trust this guy. Her past experience told her that people like Zhang Yechen would always have their own little calculations. But she also knew that it would be difficult to break through this kind of mystery by relying on herself, especially when it comes to dark networks. She was silent for a few seconds, and finally got a little bit, okay, but there is a condition. All information must be shared, don't play with me. Trade. Zhang Yechen smiled meaningfully, as if he had expected her to answer. At this moment, a sudden burst of footsteps came from outside the warehouse, followed by the sound of the car door closing. Lin Ruoxi and Zhang Yechen looked at each other, and both of them realized that the situation was wrong. She quickly turned off the flashlight and hid behind a shelf, while Zhang Yechen quickly put away his computer and squatted on the other side. Several people came in the door, holding a flashlight in their hands, and the light was shaking in the warehouse. One of the rough voices sounded. The boss said that you can't leave any living here, so search for details. Lin Ruoxi felt nervous. These people were not police or ordinary gangsters, and their voices seemed to be coming to them. She held the rod tightly and flew in her brain to calculate the way to take off her body. Zhang Yechen next to her gave her a hand gesture, signaling her not to act rashly, then took out a small device from her pocket and pressed it. The next second, a harsh warning sound suddenly came from the warehouse, as if a security system was touched. Those people were obviously shocked and began to look around in a hurry. Zhang Yechen took the opportunity to pull Lin Ruoxi and traverse from the back of the shelf to another exit, and the two quickly rushed out. Running to the alley outside, Lin Ruoxi gasped and turned to stare at Zhang Yechen. Did you know someone would come? Guess. Zhang Yechen spoke with his shoulders, his lingering words as if he was chatting about family matters. Behind the death password is not just a simple hand. If you answered this letter, it would be like entering their game. They? Lin Ruoxi raised her eyebrows, believing that things were more complicated than she thought. Zhang Yechen didn't say anything more, but just took out a business card from his pocket and stuffed it into her hand. Tomorrow at noon, this address. I will show you something real. After speaking, he pulled the brim of his hat and turned around and disappeared into the alley. Lin Ruoxi looked down at the business card, which had only one address and one time on it, without any extra information. She put her business card in her pocket and looked up at the night sky. The rain had stopped, but there was still a pressure in the air. She knew that the game had just begun. The next morning, Lin Ruoxi just left the door and met a girl under the floor. The girl had short hair and was wearing a somewhat old denim jacket, with clear fatigue and sadness in her eyes. As soon as she saw Lin Ruoxi, she walked over quickly, and said with a trembling voice, "You are Lin Ruoxi, right? My name is Chen Xiaoman. I need your help." Lin Ruoxi stopped and looked at the other party. The girl looked only 20 years old, her face was white, and her eyes were red, as if she had just cried. She clicked the head and signaled the other party to continue. Chen Xiaoman bit his lip, as if he had been brave enough to open his mouth. "My brother, he died. He was killed in an alley in the southern district 3 days ago." The police said he was killed at will, but I know it was not. He had been checking some things before his death, and he also said something like password. I heard you are so bad. Can you help me find my hand? Lin Ruoxi's eyes changed slightly when he heard the words password. She immediately thought of the monitoring screen she saw last night. Could it be that the man who fell in a pool of blood was Chen Xiaoman's brother? She didn't show too much emotion, but just asked lightly, "What's your brother's name?" What was he looking for? Chen Xiaoman was low and his voice was so low that he could hardly hear it. His name is Chen Xiang. As for what to do, he didn't tell me too much, he just said it was dangerous and let me ignore it. But I can't just forget it, he is my only family. Lin Ruoxi was silent for a few seconds, and his brain had already begun to spell information. Chen Xiang, death code, the alley in the south, these threads were threaded together, making her confused that the appearance of this girl was no coincidence. She clicked, "Okay, I'll help you. But you have to tell me everything you know, don't hide it." Chen Xiaoman was busy with his head, with a flash of hope in his eyes. Thank you very much." Lin Ruoxi turned around and walked towards the agreed address. Chen Xiaoman's story made her more convinced that there was a bigger sarcasm behind this game, and she had been rolled into the center of the storm. At noon, she came to the address given by Zhang Yechen, which was a small coffee shop located in the city center. The decoration of the cafe is very ordinary, but there are not many people, and it looks a bit deserted. She pushed the door in and saw Zhang Yechen sitting in the corner, with a notebook computer in front of her, and a bunch of monitoring screens and data streams were displayed on the screen. "It's time to come." Zhang Yechen raised his head and looked at her, with a silly chatting in his voice. "Stop talking, tell me the truth." Lin Ruoxi pulled open the chair and sat down, swept over him coldly. Zhang Yechen smiled and pushed the computer in front of her. "Look at this. The source of the death code is not just a few random murders. I dug up some things in the dark network. Behind these codes, there is a group called the Dark Internet Chess Game. They treat the murderers as games and the solvers as opponents. And you have been chosen by them." Lin Ruoxi stared at the screen, her face becoming more and more solemn. A screenshot of a dark web forum is displayed on the screen, and someone posted an anonymous account. The content is about the challenge of death passwords, and there are several blurry photos. The scene in the photos is the scene of several recent cases. "Why did they choose me?" she asked, with a slight twitch that was hard to detect. Zhang Yechen leaned on the back of the chair, his eyes becoming a little deeper. "Because you are so smart that they think you are a worthy opponent. Or," he put it on, and a meaningful smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, "because something you have in the past makes them particularly interested in you." Lin Ruoxi's fingers were slightly slight, but she quickly covered the past without letting Zhang Yechen see anything strange. No one knows what happened to her past, and no one should have known it. But this guy's words made her feel uneasy. She took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. "What about you? Why are you coming in?" Zhang Yechen spoke with his shoulders, his lingering was as relaxed as if he was chatting. I just think this game is quite interesting, so I can see if I can get some good." Lin Ruoxi didn't believe his ghost, but he didn't ask any more. She knew that no matter how many questions she asked, she would not get the truth. She turned her attention back to the computer screen and began to study the screenshots carefully. These codes, these cases, and secret chess game. Everything is like a huge network, and she is being trapped step by step. At this moment, the door of the coffee shop was pushed open and a middle-aged man with a beard walked in. He was wearing a somewhat old suit, his eyes swept across the store with a sharp look, and finally locked on Lin Ruoxi and Zhang Yechen. He strode over, his voice low and powerful. "Lin Ruoxi, it's you again. Don't tell me, you're interfering in something you don't care about again." Lin Ruoxi raised his head and found out that this person was Wang Jichang from the Municipal Bureau's Serious Case Group, an old criminal policeman. She had dealt with this guy a few times, but the relationship was not good, but it was not as good as tearing her face. She smiled faintly, and she was wearing a splash in her voice. "Why, you have to worry about drinking a cup of coffee?" Wang Jichang snorted coldly, pulled open the chair and sat down, staring at her. Don't talk nonsense to me. What happened in Nan district last night has something to do with you. There's also the case of Chen Xian. I heard that his sister has found you. Lin Ruoxi, I warn you, this is not a game you can play. Stop. Lin Ruoxi didn't answer, but just lowered his head and took a sip of coffee, as if he hadn't heard his warning. Wang Ji saw her with such a severity, and her face was a little red, but she couldn't do anything about it. He turned to Zhang Yechen, his eyes even worse. And with you, don't think I don't know who you are. Shadow, right? If I catch you online, I guarantee you can't get away. Zhang Yechen smiled and raised his hands, as if surrendering. Team, don't be so angry. I'm just a passerby who drinks coffee and I don't know anything. Wang Jichang sneered, obviously not believing it, but he didn't say anything more. He stood up and threw a sentence. You'd better be honest, don't force me to be serious. After speaking, he turned away, leaving a heavy smell of ignition. Lin Ruoxi looked at his back and narrowed his eyes slightly. She knew that although Wang Jichang was foul, his ability to handle the case was not bad. Since he came to the door, he told the police that they had begun to notice the game. But she also knew that the police's old method could not handle such a secret internet chess game. It seems that our opponent is not just a hand, but also a slut. Zhang Yechen opened his mouth with a smile, with a slight scent in his language. Lin Ruoxi ignored him and just recorded the information on the computer screen in his brain, then stood up and said, Let's go, there's something else to do. Where to go? Zhang Yechen raised his eyebrows. Chen Xiang's case is on the scene. Lin Ruoxi's voice was cold, as if he had made up a certain determination. I want to see with my eyes what is hidden in that string of death passwords. When Lin Ruoxi and Zhang Yechen left the coffee shop, the sky in Yunhai City was still gray, as if it would rain again at any time. Pedestrians on the street rushed by. No one noticed these two people, and no one knew what a dangerous game they were about to step into. Lin Ruoxi walked in front, her pace was very fast. The underside of the black shirt swayed slightly with her movements. Zhang Yechen was wearing the black baseball cap on the top as usual, with both hands in his pockets, and slowly following behind, as if he was not in a hurry at all. Are you sure you want to go to the scene? Zhang Yechen's voice came from behind, carrying a silly chatter. The police must have sealed that place tightly, and even the flies could not fly in. Lin Ruoxi didn't look back, but just said coldly, That's your business. Since your skills are so good, it shouldn't be difficult to help me get the monitoring and alert lines, right? Zhang Yechen smiled lightly and stopped talking. He knew that Lin Ruoxi would not be able to pull back once he decided on anything. He took out a small piece of equipment from his pocket, walked and operated it with his head low, and a bunch of jumping data and map marks were displayed on the screen. The alley in the south area, the case has been set as a key monitoring area by the police. There are 3 cameras around and 2 patrol teams. I can hack into the system and give you a half-hour window, but no matter how many, it won't work. It's been half an hour. Lin Ruoxi's temperament was very calm, as if he had expected that he would have a way out. The two soon arrived at the southern area. The entrance to the alley was indeed surrounded by a yellow warning line. Several uniformed policemen stood nowhere, sweeping around with vigilance. Lin Ruoxi stopped and hid in a shadow on a street corner, observing the surrounding situation. The alley is very narrow, with old brick walls on both sides, covered with tiny dung and falling paint, and the air is filled with a damp fishy smell, which makes people uncomfortable. Zhang Yechen leaned against the wall, knocking his fingers quickly on the equipment. After a few minutes, he said in a low voice, Okay, the head of the image has been cut off by me, and the patrol team also received a false news, which will leave for 10 minutes. The action is quick, don't let me work in vain. Lin Ruoxi clicked a little, quickly crossed the warning line, and entered the alley with his waist. Zhang Yechen followed her, although he didn't say anything, his eyes clearly showed a little more vigilance. The light in the alley was very dark, and only a broken road light was barely lit far away. There were still some blood that had not been cleaned and clean. Although it had been diluted by the rain, the pungent smell still made people laugh. Lin Ruoxi squatted down and carefully observed the traces on the ground. A rough circle was painted with a pink around the bloodline, and the circle was where Chen Xiang fell. She took out her phone, took a few photos, and began to check the walls and ground around her to find any possible traces. Her eyes were as focused as a sophisticated instrument, and no trace of detail could escape her eyes. "Look at this." Zhang Yechen suddenly opened his mouth, his voice pressing very low. He stood in front of a wall deep in the alley, and the light of the flashlight shone on the wall, 3-17-9-22-5-14. It was the death password that Lin Ruoxi received. The numbers are written in white pink, and the characters are a bit sloppy, but each number is written very large, as if it is deliberately trying to attract attention. Lin Ruoxi walked over and stared at the string of numbers, flying in his brain. She had long tried to match letters, coordinates, or even time with these numbers, but she could not get a reasonable explanation. She took out her notebook, copied the numbers, and began to write down various possible combinations next to her. Her pen tip was flying on the paper, her eyes getting more and more serious. "Don't be too busy. This kind of code cannot be cracked by guessing." Zhang Yechen leaned against the wall, with a disdain in his language. "The guys in the dark internet chess game use advanced encryption algorithms, and ordinary people can't play at all. What about you?" Lin Ruoxi looked up at him with a cold look. "Don't you call it blackmail? Help me unlock it." Zhang Yechen snatched her shoulders, took her notebook, wrote several formulas and symbols next to her, and then slammed her head. "This is not a simple mathematical problem. These numbers are just surfaces, real passwords are hidden in other places. I need more data, such as codes found in other cases, or related information on the dark network." Lin Ruoxi didn't say anything, but just took back the notebook. She knew that Zhang Yechen had made sense, but she didn't like this feeling of passiveness. She stood up and continued searching the alley, trying to find any traces that could help her. At this moment, her foot kicked a hard thing. When she looked down, she saw it was a small metal piece, like a part of a badge, with a vague chess pattern engraved on it. She picked up the metal piece and wrote it carefully. The chessboard pattern made her heart move. "In the secret chess game. Could it be that this is their logo?" She put the metal piece in her pocket and was ready to go back and study it carefully. Zhang Yechen saw the scene and walked over and glanced at it, his eyebrows slightly anaconda, but he didn't say anything. "The time is almost over, we have to leave," he reminded in a low voice. His eyes swept towards the entrance of the alley. Sure enough, the sound of footsteps spread far away, and the patrol team seemed to have come back. Lin Ruoxi clicked the head, quickly packed up the things, and the two of them slipped out from the other exit of the alley. As soon as she returned to the corner of the street, her phone suddenly shook. It was a new message. The sender was still the strange number. The content was only one sentence. "No, the first step was good, but the game just started." She stared at the phone screen, her face getting harder and harder. The other party not only knew that she had come to the scene of the case, but even her actions were clear. The feeling of being monitored made her feel uncomfortable. Zhang Yechen came over and took a look, and smiled lightly. "It seems that our opponents are quite good at playing. Don't waste it." Lin Ruoxi put away his phone, his language as cold as ice. "Didn't you say you could dig up information from the dark network? Now let's dig it for me. I want to know who this helps." Zhang Yechen looked over, as if he had expected her to say this. "Okay, but this is not free. To help you dig out information, you have to answer me a condition." "What conditions?" Lin Ruoxi narrowed her eyes, obviously not like this kind of deal. "I'll talk about it later." Zhang Yechen smiled meaningfully and turned forward. "Let's go, find a safe place. I need time to invade their systems." The two came to an inconspicuous small hotel. Zhang Yechen rented a room and started to set up his equipment. The room was small and there was a scent of old air, but for them, the place was hidden and safe. Zhang Yechen sat on the bed, with 3 notebook computers in front of him, and various data streams and codes were displayed on the screen. His 10 fingers quickly tapped on the keyboard, his eyes focused as if he was performing some kind of artistic creation. Lin Ruoxi sat aside, looked through the photos and notes he had just taken, and tried to find more traces from them. Her brain never stopped for a moment. Death code, dark web chess game, chessboard pattern on metal films. These fragments were smuggled in her brain, and they could never form a complete image. It's progress. Zhang Yechen suddenly opened his mouth, and there was a burst of excitement in his voice. He transferred one of the computers, and the screen showed a dark forum page, with an anonymous user post titled "New Game Opening, Target Closed." There is not much content in the post, but it mentions a typographical black chess and there is a sentence: "The first password is just an appetizer, and the real challenge is behind." Lin Ruoxi stared at the screen, her eyebrows tightly locked. Black chess, is this the player's name or the call from someone in the organization? She wrote this name in her brain and asked, "Can you find the information about the poster?" "It's hard." Zhang Yechen slammed his head and continued to knock on the keyboard. The anonymity of the dark network is very strong. This guy uses multiple agents and encryption, so I need more time. However, I dug up something else. He switched to another screen, which showed a blurry photo of a man wearing a mask holding a piece of chess-like stuff in his hand, and the background looked like a basement. "Is this an internal photo of the dark web chess game?" Lin Ruoxi asked, with a hint of anxiety in his voice. "It should be." Zhang Yechen pointed. This photo was recovered from a deleted post, and the poster mentioned a location, a scrap factory in the east of Yunhai City. They seemed to have a spot there, or at least they had used that place. Lin Ruoxi recorded this location and had already started to count the next move in his brain. She knew that the East District was just as coral as the South District, and even more dangerous, but if it was really a point of a secret chess game, she would have to go there. She couldn't let these people continue to play with her fate, nor could Chen Xiaoman's brother die in vain. "Don't rush to die." Zhang Yechen seemed to have seen through her thoughts, and there was a warning in his language: that place is not a small field like an alley. The guy in the secret chess game might have set up a trap waiting for you to join the Ronaldo website. "I don't plan to die." Lin Ruoxi replied coldly, stood up to pack up his things, "But I can't sit and wait for them to come to find me. You continue to dig up information and I'll go and see it myself." Zhang Yechen no longer slapped her, but just snatched her shoulders and continued to lower her head to knock on the keyboard. When Lin Ruoxi left the hotel, it was completely dark, and the nights in Yunhai City always had an indescribable sense of pressure, as if they would devour everything at any time. She took a taxi and headed straight to the East District to scrap the factory, thinking about every detail of the game repeatedly. The factory is located on the edge of the east, surrounded by wastelands and grassroots open spaces, and the air is filled with the smell of iron and rotten. After getting off the car, Lin Ruoxi stood in front of the factory gate, and was terrifying around him, with only occasional voices, as if someone was talking in a whisper. She turned on the flashlight of her phone and walked in carefully. The inside of the factory was even more broken than she thought. The ground was covered with gravel and iron sheets, and the dust in the air made people cough. She walked along a narrow corridor and tried to find any traces that could prove the existence of the light and dark chess game. After walking for a few steps, she suddenly heard a slight sound of footsteps coming from the darkness that was nowhere to go. She quickly turned off the flashlight, hid behind a broken wall, and held her breath. The sound of the footsteps was getting closer and closer, and with the deep voice, it sounded like two men were talking. The boss said, "This place can no longer be used, everything has to be moved." One of the sounds was rough, with obvious impatience. "Where did you move?" "The guy from Black Chess is so nervous recently that he always thinks someone is eyeing us." Another voice was low and he sounded a little nervous. "What if he doesn't matter, we just listen to the orders anyway." That Lin Ruoxi heard that he had started to check, and he might be. The rough voice suddenly stopped, as if he was conscious of something, followed by a short silence. Lin Ruoxi felt nervous. They knew her existence and might have even expected her to come here. She held the self-defense stick in her pocket and calculated the way to take off her body. At this moment, a beam of light from the flashlight suddenly swept over and shone directly on the place where she was hiding. "Who is there?" The rough voice suddenly rose, and his footsteps quickly approached her. Lin Ruoxi knew that she could not hide, so she stood up and looked at the other party coldly. Two men stood far away, one tall and slim, the other as thin as a bamboo pole. Both of them were wearing black coats, with clear enemies in their eyes. "Yeah, it's really Lin Ruoxi." The tall one grinned and showed her yellow teeth. "I'm not a little shy. I dare to come here alone." Lin Ruoxi didn't answer the conversation, but just looked at the other party silently and tried to find out their weaknesses. Her brain has begun to simulate various possible escape routes, but she also knows that this time it is probably not so easy to get rid of. "Don't waste your time, take it away," the thin man said coldly, took out a dagger from his waist, and the cold light flashed in the darkness. Lin Ruoxi's heart sank, but there was no panic on her face. She knew that at this moment, she must calm down and find a living machine. Her hand slowly reached into her pocket, ready to pour a single puff. At this moment, a harsh warning sound suddenly came from outside the factory, as if a security system had been touched. The two men were obviously shocked and turned to look in the direction of the sound. She seized this opportunity and quickly rushed to a path next to her, with only one thought in her brain: run. The footsteps behind her were rushing and yelling, and with anger and shouting, she knew that the degree of danger of this game was beyond her expectations. But she also knew that she could not stop, because once she stopped, what could be waiting for her might be real death. Lin Ruoxi's steps were rumbling in the broken corridor of the scrap factory, gravel creaking under her feet, and her heartbeat was as fast as a war drum in her ears. The two men behind him were getting closer and closer, and the rough anger and the thin man's cold threat were mixed together, making the darkness even more depressing. She clenched her teeth, and the speed plate in her brain counted every possible escape route. Suddenly, a half-collapsed door frame in front of me came into my eyes, and behind the door seemed to be a larger space. Without thinking too much, she accelerated her way over and just dripped into the door frame, and then she growled from behind, "Don't let her run away." Then, a rapid pace approached. She quickly looked around. It looked like a deserted car, with old mechanical parts scattered on the ground, and a few broken wires were hanging on the ceiling, and the air was filled with a pungent smell of oil. Her video was locked on a pile of iron buckets in the corner of the car, and the place could barely hide. She ran over with her waist, hid behind the iron bucket, held her breath, and minimized her presence. The two men quickly rushed into the car, and the light of the flashlight was shaking, as if searching for a basketball in the dark. The man with a rough voice cursed, "This little girl runs quite fast, look for details, don't let the boss blame him." The thin man didn't say anything, but just moved silently. His footsteps sounded as light as a ghost, which made Lin Ruoxi feel nervous. She glanced in the gap between the iron bucket, and the thin figure was getting closer and closer, and the dagger in her hand flashed cold light under the flashlight. Her hands tightly held the self-defense rod in her pocket, and her brain had begun to simulate possible countermeasures. She knew that fighting hard was not wise. These two people clearly had good training, and she was not a match for her single physical strength. But she has her strength's head. As long as she can create a moment of chaos, she can turn it around. Just as the thin man was about to walk to the iron bucket, Lin Ruoxi suddenly grabbed a small iron piece on his foot and threw it hard towards the other end of the car. The iron piece hit the iron rack far away, making a crisp ding sound, which was particularly harsh in the empty car. The two men turned their heads in an instant, and the loud man growled, "It's there." The two men quickly swept towards the sound, and the light of the flashlight also moved away. Lin Ruoxi grabbed the gap for the second time, quickly slipped out from behind the iron barrel, and ran towards another exit in the car. Her movements were light and fast, and almost no sound was made, but the sound of her feet quickly rose again, and it was obvious that the other party had realized that she was being fooled. She bit her teeth tightly and pulled out of the car to a narrower passage, with the walls on both sides almost sticking to her shoulders, and the musty smell in the air was suffocating. At the end of the passage is a flash of iron door, with faint light coming from the door, like an exit leading to the outside. She pushed hard, but the door was still, and she was obviously locked. She turned around and looked at her feet, and the sound of her feet behind her was so close that she had no time to hesitate. She quickly squatted down, took out a fine iron from her pocket, and began to pry the lock. This is the skill she learned from an old detective in her early years. Although it is not commonly used, it can always help her at any time. The wire was moving in the lock hole, making a slight clicking sound. Her head was sweating coldly, and her fingers were as stable as a machine. The sound of the footsteps behind him became more and more resonant. The man with a thick sound had appeared at the entrance of the passage, and the light from the flashlight was shining directly. She bit her teeth tightly, and her hands were moving faster, and finally she heard a crisp click and opened. She pushed open the iron door suddenly, and a cold wind came over. Outside the door was a wasteland, and the faint lights of Yunhai City could be seen far away. She was not happy for a while and quickly pulled out of the iron door, closed the door with a screw on her foot, and grabbed the handle of the door, and fought for a while. After doing this, there was a huge sound afterwards, and it was obvious that the two men began to bump into the door. She turned around and ran towards the other end of the open space. With only one thought in her brain, she had to throw them away. After running far away, the phone suddenly shook. She lowered her head and saw that it was a message from Zhang Yechen. "I am at the intersection east of the factory. Don't waste time, come quickly." She felt a stir in her heart. How did this guy know that she was here? But now it was not the time to think about these things. She quickly adjusted her direction and ran towards the east. The sound of the collision behind her became more and more intense. It was obvious that the two men would catch up with each other at any time. After a few minutes, she finally saw the intersection. Zhang Yechen's black shadow stood next to a broken motorcycle, with the brim of the hat very low, as if she had been waiting there for a long time. She ran over and gasped, asking, "How did you know I'm here?" "Winner, I got into the monitoring near the factory. I just saw you being chased like a rabbit." Zhang Yechen was joking in his voice, but his eyes were unusually harsh. "Don't be slow when getting on the car. They are crowded, so we don't have time to waste." Lin Ruoxi quickly stepped onto the back seat of the motorcycle. Zhang Yechen snatched the oil door and the car suddenly rushed out, and the sound of the engine was particularly harsh in the night. Behind him, several black shadows chased after the factory, but were quickly thrown away and disappeared into the darkness. She leaned behind Zhang Yechen's back, her heartbeat slowly calmed down, but she didn't stop for a moment in her brain. The conversations she heard just now were black chess, shift points, and their familiarity with her. All of this was proven, and the secret chess game was more dangerous than she thought. Motorcycles shuttle through the streets of Yunhai City, and the night wind shaves over the face, bringing a sense of tranquility. Zhang Yechen parked the car on a remote corner of the street and turned to look at her, speaking in a rare manner. "You are too reckless this time. You can't handle that place alone. The guys in the secret chess game are not just a few gangsters, but the power behind them is so great that you can't imagine." Lin Ruoxi looked at him coldly, without answering, but took out the piece of metal from his pocket and came to him. "Do you know this?" Zhang Yechen took the metal film and watched it for a few seconds. His face changed slightly, but he quickly covered it up. "The chess pattern, it's their mark." "Where did you come from?" "In the alley, Chen Xiang's case was discovered." Lin Ruoxi's voice was calm, but there was a splash in his eyes. "You know more than you said, right? Don't play with me." "Zhang Yechen, I'm not the first day I met you." Zhang Yechen smiled and gave her the metal piece, saying, "Okay, I admit, I know something. But there are some things that I can't tell you now. You just need to know that the secret chess game is not a single criminal organization. They play a bigger game, and you are just a piece on their chessboard." "Chess piece?" Lin Ruoxi narrowed his eyes, with a burst of anger in his language. "What about you? What about you? What about them? Are they chess players or another chess piece?" Zhang Yechen did not answer directly, but just lowered his head and the smoke spread out in the night. "Me? I am an outsider, but occasionally I will give you a push. Don't ask too much, Lin Ruoxi. There is some truth. You will only be more dangerous if you know it." Lin Ruoxi stared at him and tried to read something from his expression, but this guy's face always looked like he was wearing a mask, making it impossible for people to see through. She finally withdrew her eyes and turned to the city lights far away, thinking about every detail of the game in her brain. She knew that Zhang Yechen had been confused a lot, but she also knew that now was not the time to ask questions. She needs more threads and more evidence to really tear this website open. What are you going to do next? Zhang Yechen spitted out a smoke circle and broke the silence. Continue to check. Lin Ruoxi's voice was very determined, as if he had made up a certain decision. Chen Xiaoman's brother cannot die in vain, nor can those victims die in vain. I don't care who is behind the secret chess game, I will dig them out. Zhang Yechen raised his eyebrows, as if he was a little surprised by her actions, but he did not stop him anymore. He pinched his cigarette and stood up. Okay, I'll help you. But remember, the price of this game is not something you can afford. In the next few days, Lin Ruoxi almost didn't rest. She and Zhang Yechen acted separately, tracing the traces of the secret chess game, and trying to crack the true meaning of the death password. Zhang Yechen used his skills to successfully invade some secret forums of the dark network and dug out more information about black chess. This genre seems to be one of the core characters of the organization, responsible for designing all games, including the encryption method of death passwords. Lin Ruoxi contacted Chen Xiaoman and tried to find more traces from the items left by her brother. Chen Xiaoman's home is in an old small area in Yunhai City. The house is not big and the decoration is simple and a bit shabby. She took Lin Ruoxi to her brother's room, which was filled with books and documents, and an old notebook computer was also placed on the table. Chen Xiaoman's eyes were still sad, and he said in a low voice, "My brother had been checking some things during his lifetime. He said that this was related to some big names in Yunhai City, but he never told me what it was. I only know that a few days before his death, and he always said that someone was following him." Lin Ruoxi clicked the head and began to look through the documents on the desk. Most of them were ordinary reports and notes, but one of the notes caught her attention. The cover of the notebook is very old, with various numbers and symbols written inside, and some things that look like passwords. She turned to the last page and found a string of familiar numbers, 3-17-9-22-5-14. There was also a circle with a red pen next to it, writing a sentence, "Find the source and end the game." Her heartbeat accelerated slightly, and the meaning of this sentence was obvious. Before Chen Xiang died, he was approaching the truth about the death password, and he might even know a key secret of the dark internet chess game. She put the notebook in hand and turned it over to Chen Xiaoman. "I will take these things away and study them first. If you remember anything, tell me any time." Chen Xiaoman pointed a little, and there was a flash of hope in his eyes. "Thank you, Miss Lin. I know this is dangerous, but I really hope to be fair for my brother." Lin Ruoxi didn't say anything, just patted her on the shoulder and left the small area. After returning to her apartment, she immediately took pictures of the contents in the notebook and posted them to Zhang Yechen, and began to analyze the numbers and symbols by herself. Her brain was like a high-speed transit machine, trying every possible solution, but it was never completely cracked. Just then, Zhang Yechen called in a rare tantrum in his voice, "You'd better come over quickly. I dug up a big thing in the dark network. Black Chess posted a new post saying that there will be a new game tonight, and the location is a scrap code in the north of Yunhai City. They also mentioned you, saying that this is the final challenge." Lin Ruoxi's heart sank. The north area. She heard that it was one of the most dangerous areas in Yunhai City, almost a paradise of underground forces. Without thinking too much, she quickly put on her coat, took the equipment, and went straight to the address given by Zhang Yechen. On the way, her cell phone received another strange message, with only one sentence: "Tonight, the game will end. Come on, Lin Ruoxi." She stared at the phone screen, her face getting harder and harder. This is not only a pick, but also a naked threat. But she knew that she could not retreat, and the game was finally closed, and she had to face it. When I arrived at the north area, the sky was completely dark, and the sea breeze was coming with a fishy smell, making people creepy around me. Zhang Yechen stood next to a broken container, with a notebook computer in front of him, and the monitoring screen with the code displayed on the screen. As soon as he saw Lin Ruoxi, he said in a low voice, "They are already here." I got into the supervision and saw at least 5 people carrying weapons. Are you sure you want to be tough? Lin Ruoxi didn't answer, but just glanced at the screen coldly, then took out a rod and a small bottle of anti-wolf spray from his pocket. I don't plan to be hard, but I can't let them walk around. You help me with the supervision and communication. I want to go in and see what the game is playing. Zhang Yechen snatched his shoulders and no longer stopped. He quickly tapped his fingers on the keyboard. Okay, I'll give you 10 minutes of free time, don't waste it. Lin Ruoxi clicked the head and quickly dived into the code head area. The night and the container provide a good cover, and she moves carefully to avoid the shadows of people who are monitoring and patrolling the road. Her goal was clear: to find Black Chess, crack the final death password, and end the game. In front of a deserted warehouse deep in the code, she finally saw the goal. A man wearing a black mask stood at the entrance of the warehouse, holding a tablet in his hand, and a string of numbers appeared on the screen, which was the last question of the death password. There were also several men in black standing beside him, guarding him like a guardian. Lin Ruoxi hid behind a container, and her brain flew quickly. She knew that head-on battles were ineffective, but she also knew that this was the final opportunity. She lowered her head and looked at her phone. Zhang Yechen sent a message: "The monitoring has been cut off, and I have also interfered with their communication. We are moving quickly." She took a deep breath, held the rod tightly, and prepared to pour a single shot. At this moment, the masked man suddenly turned around, as if he felt something. His voice was low and cold. "Lin Ruoxi, since he is here, don't hide it. The last game of the game should begin." Her heart beat suddenly, but there was no panic on her face. She walked out from behind the collection box and looked at the other party coldly. "Black Chess, right? Your game is over, it's over." The man in the mask smiled lightly, and there was a sickly excited voice in his voice. "And? No, that's just the beginning. I'll give you the last password, crack it, and you can survive. Otherwise..." He paused for a moment, his language became even colder. "You will become the last piece of this game." Lin Ruoxi didn't answer, just stared at the tablet in his hand, and his brain had already begun to analyze the numbers on the screen. Her fingers tightened in her pocket, ready to attack possible at any time. In the last game of this game, she has to do her best regardless of the result. The sea outside the warehouse was getting colder and colder, and the darkness at the head was like an endless purity, swallowing all the light. Lin Ruoxi stood in front of the Black Chess, and the air between the two seemed to have solidified, filled with invisible pressure.